Farrah Fawcett wasn't just a Hollywood star, she was a force of nature. With that radiant smile, sun-kissed hair, and undeniable spark, she didn't just capture the spotlight, she redefined it. In the 1970s, she wasn't simply admired, she was worshipped, a living symbol of beauty, freedom, and charm that every magazine, camera, and fan couldn't look away from. But behind the golden glow and effortless laughter was a woman carrying a storm no one could see. Beneath the perfection was pressure, heartbreak, and rebellion brewing quietly against an industry that demanded she stay flawless. She wasn't just America's sweetheart, she was its most misunderstood rebel. A woman whose strength would one day shock the very world that had placed her on a pedestal. By the time Farrah Fawcett walked onto the Tonight Show stage, she wasn't just another celebrity promoting her latest project, she was a woman fighting to reclaim her voice. What began as a simple, light-hearted interview soon spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history. The audience laughed nervously. The host shifted uneasily in his chair. And beneath the bright studio lights, Farrah's attempt to be authentic became the moment that the world began to turn against her. What no one realized then was that the laughter echoing through that studio would mark the start of a slow, painful shift, a point from which her career would never fully recover. To understand how it came to that moment, we have to go back to the quiet Texas girl with dreams bigger than her small-town world. Before she was a superstar, a pin-up, and an icon, she was simply Farrah Fawcett. Born on February 2, 1947, in Corpus Christi, Texas, a coastal city of oil rigs and ocean winds, far removed from the polished glitz of Hollywood. Her father, James Fawcett, was a hard-working oil field contractor, and her mother, Pauline, a gentle homemaker who filled their modest home with warmth, discipline, and faith. Farrah was the younger of two daughters, a blend of Southern grace and quiet determination. From the moment she entered a room, people noticed her. Teachers described her as soft-spoken yet magnetic, someone who could silence a classroom with nothing more than her smile. At W.B. Ray High School, she became something of a local legend, voted Most Beautiful 4 years in a row, a record that was both a blessing and a prophecy. Beauty opened doors for her, but it also became the weight she would spend her entire life trying to lift. In 1965, she left Corpus Christi to attend the University of Texas at Austin. She began studying microbiology but soon realized her heart belonged elsewhere. Art, color, movement, these were her passions, not formulas and microscopes. Her friends remembered her as the girl who didn't just enter a room, she changed it. Heads turned, energy shifted, conversations stopped. It was during one of those university beauty contests that fate intervened. A photograph of her radiant smile began circulating around Los Angeles talent agencies. Among those who saw it was David Mirisch, a Hollywood publicist with a talent for discovering stars. He called her family over and over, insisting she had something rare, something that couldn't be taught or faked. For 2 years, Farrah refused to go. She didn't see herself as a star. But destiny has its own plans. In the summer of 1968, at just 21, she finally boarded a plane to Los Angeles with her parents' cautious blessing. Within days of arriving, she was signed by Screen Gems for $350 a week, a small fortune for a girl who had grown up surrounded by oil fields and open skies. Hollywood didn't waste time. She was cast in commercials for Noxzema cream, Ultra Bright toothpaste, and Mercury Cougar cars. Each advertisement sold an image of the perfect American dream, sun, youth, and effortless beauty, and Farrah embodied all of it. America didn't just watch her, they fell in love with her. Soon she began landing small television roles. She appeared in The Flying Nun, I Dream of Jeannie, and Harry O., where she played the love interest of David Jansen's brooding detective. The parts were small, but her presence was unforgettable. Around that time, she met actor Lee Majors, a connection that changed everything. Through him, she gained access to Hollywood's inner circle, landing guest roles on The $6 Million Man. Her charm, grace, and distinctive look made her stand out even among the stars. By 1976, the once shy girl from Texas had become a national obsession. Her name, her hair, her smile, Everything about her was iconic. But what truly cemented her legend was a single image. A photograph of Farrah wearing a red swimsuit, her golden hair cascading in waves, and her smile brighter than the California sun. That poster sold over 12 million copies and became the most famous pinup image of all time. Overnight, Farrah Fawcett became more than a star. She became a symbol, the very definition of beauty and glamour in the 1970s. But behind the fame, there was also confinement. The world adored the image, not the woman. And as the applause grew louder, Farrah began to feel smaller inside the role she had been given. The same world that had built her up now expected her to stay frozen in perfection. She had become an angel to millions, but even angels sometimes long to break free. In 1976, Farrah Fawcett's life changed in a single flash of a camera. What began as a simple backyard photo shoot turned her into an international phenomenon. The now iconic red swimsuit poster, shot by photographer Bruce McBroom under the warm California sun, captured Farrah exactly as she was, natural, radiant, and effortlessly magnetic. There was no stylist, no makeup artist, no elaborate set. Just Farrah, brushing her sunlit hair, adjusting the strap of her swimsuit, and smiling with that spontaneous mix of innocence and confidence that would define a generation. Within months, the image sold more than 12 million copies, becoming the most famous poster of the decade. That single picture didn't just capture beauty, it captured an era. Almost overnight, Farrah wasn't just famous. She was untouchable. Her smile was on billboards, dorm room walls, and magazine covers across the world. Her look became a cultural blueprint, the Farrah hair copied by millions. That same year, producer Aaron Spelling came calling with a project that would cement her place in television history, a new ABC drama called Charlie's Angels. Cast as Jill Monroe, the smart, athletic, all-American angel, Farrah brought a sparkle that transformed the show from a simple detective series into a global sensation. When Charlie's Angels premiered in September 1976, ratings exploded. Farrah wasn't just another actress on TV. She was a movement. Women admired her independence and strength. Men idolized her beauty. Television executives called her the most bankable face in America. But as fame soared, Farrah began to feel trapped. Behind the flashing lights and adoring headlines, she was restless. The show's grueling schedule left her exhausted. The scripts felt shallow, and her marriage to actor Lee Majors was slowly crumbling under the weight of stardom. She longed for depth, for a role that would let her prove she was more than a poster or a hairstyle. Then, in the spring of 1977, she did something almost unthinkable. At the height of her fame, Farrah walked away from Charlie's Angels after just one season. The decision sent shockwaves through Hollywood. ABC immediately filed a $7 million breach of contract lawsuit. Tabloids branded her reckless and ungrateful, and industry insiders warned she'd destroyed her career. But Farrah refused to back down. "I can't play the same woman forever," she reportedly told friends. "I want to be taken seriously." The legal battle dragged on for nearly 2 years, but Farrah held her ground. Eventually, she reached a settlement, agreeing to return for 6 guest appearances between 1978 and 1980. Her replacement, Cheryl Ladd, kept the show alive, but fans never stopped comparing every new angel to the original. Ironically, Farrah's controversial exit only made her more famous. She had broken one of Hollywood's oldest rules. A beautiful woman was never supposed to take control of her own destiny. Farrah thought she had finally earned her freedom. But the world she was stepping into wasn't ready for an actress who refused to play by the rules. What was meant to be her rebirth quickly turned into a battle for credibility. Her first major film, Somebody Killed Her Husband, 1978, was mocked by critics, one of whom cruelly nicknamed it, "Somebody Killed Her Career." The following year, Sunburn with Charles Grodin and Saturn III with Kirk Douglas also failed to impress, and soon the offers dried up. Hollywood, which had once worshipped her, now dismissed her as a pretty face out of her depth. The same system that had built her up was now shutting its doors. But Farrah Fawcett was never the kind of woman who faded quietly. Defiant and determined, she reinvented herself again. In 1981, she joined the cast of The Cannonball Run, a high-octane comedy alongside Burt Reynolds and Dean Martin. The film became a box office hit, giving her a brief return to the spotlight and proving that audiences still wanted to see her shine. Yet beneath the laughter and the fame, Farrah's struggle continued. She was still fighting for what she had always wanted. Not admiration, not fame, but respect. The girl from Corpus Christi had conquered the world once, but now she would have to do it all over again. This time not as an angel, but as a woman determined to be seen for who she truly was. By the early 1980s, Farrah Fawcett had defied Hollywood's narrow expectations and built herself back up piece by piece, but she still hadn't silenced those who said she was just a pretty face. Determined to prove them wrong, she made a bold move that shocked both critics and fans. In 1983, she took on Extremities, an off-Broadway play so raw and unsettling that many thought she was out of her mind for accepting it. Gone were the glamorous curls and glowing smile. This was Farrah stripped of artifice, playing a woman who turns on her attacker with relentless fury. Night after night, she delivered a performance that was both harrowing and magnetic, bruised, breathless, and brutally real. It wasn't just acting. It was an exorcism of every doubt Hollywood had ever thrown her way. Critics who once dismissed her now stood in awe. They called her brave, fearless, a revelation. But the price of that transformation was steep. One night, as she performed, a man in the audience stood up mid-scene, shouting her name, claiming to be the stalker who had been sending her photos and letters for months. Security rushed in and dragged him out, but the moment left her shaken. Fame, she realized, was no longer a form of admiration. It had become a kind of danger. The fear that crept in that night never truly left her, yet she pressed forward. In 1984, she made the leap from stage to television with The Burning Bed, a dramatization of Francine Hughes's true story, an abused wife who, after years of torment, set fire to her husband's bed. It was one of the most daring performances ever aired on television. Farrah's portrayal was unflinching and devastating, capturing the exhaustion and silent rage of women trapped in cycles of violence. For the first time, audiences didn't see a sex symbol. They saw a survivor. The performance earned her an Emmy nomination and gave national visibility to domestic abuse survivors. What she had achieved wasn't just artistic success, it was redemption. Farrah had reclaimed her identity, proving that behind the poster girl was an actress of rare emotional power. But as with every high point in her life, the applause came with a shadow. With newfound respect came renewed scrutiny, and the next chapter of her story wouldn't unfold on a stage or film set. It would happen live, on national television in front of millions. By the late 1980s, Farrah had become the image of reinvention, a serious actress who had conquered typecasting. But Hollywood has a cruel sense of irony, and fame has a way of circling back just when you think you've escaped it. Her scheduled appearance on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson was meant to be lighthearted, a fun promotional chat about her Playboy feature and her evolving career. What followed, however, became one of the most talked about and uncomfortable moments in talk show history. From the moment she stepped onto the stage, something felt off. The audience cheered wildly, but Farrah's energy was strange, distracted, unfocused, almost dreamlike. Her sentences wandered, looping in circles, her gaze drifting away from Carson to the backdrop behind him. At one point, she stared at the set's painted skyline and gasped, thinking it was the actual New York City view. The audience laughed, unsure whether it was a joke. Carson's polite smile tightened, his eyes betraying concern. Farrah tried to steer the conversation toward her art and independence, but the more she spoke, the more the crowd squirmed. When the segment aired, America was stunned. Some viewers thought she was drunk. Others believed she was having a breakdown. The press, as always, was merciless. Overnight, tabloids branded her unhinged, mocking her speech and appearance. The headlines weren't just cruel, they were gleeful. NBC executives, embarrassed by the spectacle, quietly decided not to invite her back. In the eyes of the public, that night became the beginning of her decline. But the truth, as always, was far more complicated. Behind the laughter and judgment was a woman exhausted by fame, cornered by the very machine she had once powered. What the audience saw as chaos was, in reality, the cost of years spent living under relentless scrutiny, a mind and soul frayed by decades of pressure. The Tonight Show moment didn't define Farrah Fawcett's talent. It exposed how brutally unforgiving Hollywood could be to a woman who dared to age, feel, and falter in public. It was a tragedy disguised as entertainment, a reminder that behind every glamorous legend lies a human being, struggling to stay whole in a world that only applauds perfection. Though she was never officially banned, Farrah Fawcett was quietly and permanently blacklisted from The Tonight Show. That infamous appearance, meant to be just another cheerful late-night conversation, became a scar she would carry for the rest of her life. The clip replayed endlessly across television networks, dissected by comedians, talk show hosts, and gossip columnists who delighted in her supposed meltdown. For years afterward, it haunted her. Every time a rerun surfaced, every time her name came up in a monologue, she was reduced to a caricature, a dazed, unstable version of herself that bore no resemblance to the woman she truly was. Later, Farrah tried to explain what had really happened that night. She had been jet-lagged after a long flight, nervous under the blazing studio lights, and genuinely overwhelmed by the atmosphere of live television. She tried to joke to keep things light, but her words stumbled under exhaustion. What the audience took as confusion was, in truth, the raw nerves of a woman struggling to keep her composure in a world that gave her no room to falter. Yet Hollywood had no mercy. The same media that had once worshipped her golden smile now turned her humanity into a spectacle. The industry that had built her into a symbol of perfection now mocked her for being imperfect. It was the cruelest irony of all. She had fought her whole life to be seen as human, and the moment she finally was, the world laughed. Behind the glitz and the gossip, though, lay a far deeper story, a private life filled with love, heartbreak, and a fight that went far beyond fame. After her divorce from actor Lee Majors in 1979, Farrah met another Hollywood legend, Ryan O'Neal. Both were at the height of their careers. He, the charming star of Love Story, and she, America's most iconic beauty. Together they became the golden couple of the 1980s, two dazzling figures whose chemistry was as electric as it was volatile. Photographers adored them. Tabloids couldn't get enough. But beneath the glamour, their relationship was a storm. In 1985, they welcomed their son, Redmond James Fawcett O'Neal. To the public, they looked like the perfect family, smiling on red carpets, vacationing in Malibu, playing the Hollywood dream. Yet behind closed doors, friends described a home filled with passion one moment and shouting the next. Ryan's daughter, Tatum O'Neal, would later accuse her father of being physically abusive toward Farrah, calling him terrifying when angry. Ryan denied the claims, but the rumors of jealousy and violence lingered, casting long shadows over their love story. Still, Farrah defended him publicly for years. Perhaps she saw in him the same vulnerability she fought to hide in herself, the same hunger for love tangled with the pain of fame. As the 1990s approached, the weight of celebrity, personal demons, and addiction began to pull them apart. By the end of the decade, their relationship had unraveled. Farrah's search for stability led her to Canadian filmmaker James Orr, who had directed her in Man of the House. At first, it seemed like a new beginning, a quiet, mature love free from the chaos of Hollywood's spotlight. But what began as tenderness ended in horror. In 1998, Orr was arrested and later convicted for assaulting her. The incident left her physically and emotionally scarred. For a time, she retreated entirely from public life, seeking peace away from cameras, headlines, and heartbreak. That same year, as the noise faded, an old name resurfaced. Greg Lott, her college sweetheart from the University of Texas, a man who had loved her long before she was famous. The two reconnected privately, and Lott later claimed that their bond endured quietly for the rest of her life. He described their final years as gentle and deeply personal, a rare calm after decades of turbulence. Yet even in her final chapter, controversy followed. Lott would later allege that in her last weeks, Ryan O'Neal exerted control over her medical care and restricted access to those closest to her, including him. The truth of those claims remains tangled in pain and memory, but what was certain was that Farrah never stopped longing for something simple and real, a love without performance, without pretense. Then in 2006, life delivered its cruelest blow. Doctors diagnosed her with anal cancer, a rare and aggressive form of the disease. For a woman who had spent her entire career under the gaze of the public, the diagnosis might have driven her deeper into privacy. But Farrah Fawcett had never been one to hide. She chose instead to confront her illness in the open, to let the world see her battle not as weakness, but as truth. The same courage that had driven her to walk off Charlie's Angels, to face critics on Broadway, to challenge stereotypes of beauty, now guided her through the hardest fight of all. In those years, the glimmer of Hollywood faded away. The makeup, the hair, the perfection, none of it mattered anymore. What remained was a woman of astonishing strength and grace who refused to let pain erase her dignity. The public who once mocked her began to see her again, this time not as a star, but as a survivor. Farrah Fawcett, the angel who had fallen and risen so many times, was preparing for her final and most human act, facing the end with courage, compassion, and truth. She refused to surrender. Even as the doctors whispered words like incurable and terminal, Farrah Fawcett looked them straight in the eye and said no. Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, nothing was too invasive, too experimental, or too painful if it meant one more chance to live. When the cancer returned in 2007, spreading to her liver, she didn't slow down. She boarded planes to Germany in search of advanced treatments unavailable in the U.S., undergoing experimental perfusion and laser therapies that left her body frail, but her spirit unbroken. Friends said her determination bordered on defiance. She wanted to fight not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been written off. With her closest friend, actress Alana Stewart, she began documenting everything: the hospital visits, the pain, the fear, and the flickers of hope that refused to die. The result was Farrah's story, a searing, unfiltered documentary that aired on NBC in May 2009. Nearly 9 million viewers watched as the woman once known for her perfect hair and radiant smile faced cancer with raw, unedited honesty. She let the world see her bald, trembling, and vulnerable, but never broken. It was a farewell that transcended vanity and fame, transforming suffering into strength. Just 1 month later, on June 25, 2009, Farrah Fawcett's extraordinary journey came to an end. She passed away at age 62, surrounded by Ryan O'Neal and Alana Stewart. Her son, Redmond, shackled and escorted from jail under special permission, was allowed to attend her funeral. That image of a mother's only son in chains, standing at her grave, remains one of the most haunting symbols of her life, beauty and tragedy intertwined to the very last breath. Fate dealt one final twist. Her death occurred just hours before Michael Jackson's sudden passing, eclipsing her farewell in the news cycle. Yet for those who truly knew her story, Farrah's quiet exit carried a different kind of power. She had faced death the way she faced life, on her own terms, with grace, courage, and honesty. Her passing marked the close of one of Hollywood's most complex and misunderstood lives. Farrah Fawcett's legacy was never simple. It was a tapestry of brilliance and heartbreak, rebellion and resilience. But even in death, controversy refused to let her rest. At the 2010 Academy Awards, fans and peers watched in disbelief as her name was left out of the In Memoriam tribute. The omission sparked outrage across the industry. Bruce Davis, then the Academy's executive director, apologized but defended the decision, arguing that Farrah's most significant work had been on television, not film. Her family's public statement was heart-wrenching, calling the snub deeply saddening and a betrayal of an international icon. The irony was painful. Farrah had spent her entire career breaking the wall between television and film, proving that talent could thrive in both worlds, and now the very institution that once honored her peers chose to erase her. But her legacy was too strong to be written out of history. In the years that followed, more chapters of her story unfolded. Her will left a $4.5 million trust for her troubled son, Redmond, ensuring his lifelong care, but nothing for Ryan O'Neal. Instead, she bequeathed $100,000 to Greg Lott, her college sweetheart, the man who claimed to be her truest love until the very end. The rest of her estate, including her prized art collection, went to her alma mater, the University of Texas. One particular piece, an Andy Warhol portrait of Farrah herself, became the center of a fierce legal battle between the university and Ryan O'Neal, who claimed she had gifted it to him. The courtroom drama played out like a final Hollywood act. Accusations, tears, testimonies, and in 2013, the court ruled in Ryan's favor, allowing him to keep the painting. It was a quiet, bitter conclusion to a love story that had spanned decades, filled with passion, betrayal, and unresolved tenderness. Yet even amid legal battles and unanswered questions, Farrah's influence never dimmed. The famous red swimsuit that launched her into legend was enshrined in the Smithsonian, standing as a relic not just of her beauty, but of an era when she embodied America's golden dream. Her groundbreaking film, The Burning Bed, remains required viewing in discussions about domestic abuse, an artistic turning point that changed the cultural conversation about women's rights and survival. And Farrah's story continues to inspire cancer patients and survivors worldwide, a raw testament to resilience and truth. Farrah Fawcett's life was a paradox of light and shadow. She was loved for her glamour, but defined by her grit. She shattered the boundaries of what women in Hollywood were supposed to be, and she paid the price for daring to live without a mask. "To break the rules," she once said, "you have to know them first. To know exactly what you're breaking." And she did. Every time the world tried to box her in as an angel, a sex symbol, a scandal, she broke free. Her journey, from the quiet Texas girl with art dreams to the global icon who faced cancer with a camera on, remains one of Hollywood's most human stories. She laughed without restraint, loved without apology, and fought without surrender. In the end, Farrah Fawcett's true beauty wasn't in her smile, her fame, or even her rebellion. It was in her honesty. She showed the world that real stardom isn't about perfection. It's about the courage to be imperfect and still keep shining. So what do you remember most about Farrah Fawcett? Her radiant beauty, her unmatched strength, or her fearless fight against the darkness? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories, because some legends, no matter how much time passes, never stop burning bright.